said you wanted to see the spice. Some people want to see the sauce. This is my personal favorite. Goes great with linguine, spaghetti, really kind of anything. That aside, so yeah, break right into the deck profile. Brought to locals. Oh yeah, Sleep Chief, highly recommend it. I know there's a lot of drama going around with Sleep Chief and whatever, but they make good stuff. Start off pretty standard, 3 louvers. Pretty much any branded deck you're gonna see is running 3 of those, so don't really have to talk about that all that much. Running 1 DESPIA Dredge. Beginning at 1 mostly because I'm not running ad libitum. So really, I'm only searching for a louver. So it's, obviously the main searcher for DESPIA. I'm guiding Quem. This has been, a branded staple ever since Cyberstorm came out. I was pretty hyped about this when it was first announced for the OCG, and I was anxiously waiting for when Quem came over to the TCG. It took a little too long for me, but now she's here and she's absolutely killing it. I run 3 copies of Fallen of Albaz, mostly because of the prevalence of Kashtira, ability to just banish. The last thing you want is to have if you're running 2, your 2 copies of Fallen of Albaz banished face down. Brand Infusion is pretty useless after that, and you're more or less going to be scooping from there. Also has a nice graveyard ability with obviously Quem, the new Albion, and Rinbroom, but I'll get to that when we get to the extra deck. Copies of Blazing Cartesia. 2 copies of Blazing Cartesia, running Fusion Deployment. So having 5 access points to having a Cartesia on the field is huge. Special summon her, summon your louver. The louver's effect pretty much non-targetable from imperm or anything. So you have Cartesia, you summon a louver, someone tries to imperm you, you just trigger Cartesia's effect, you fuse it both, and you still get to resolve your louver's effect. Cartesia is pretty huge. My favorite bird, Mercurier. The only bird that I like, monster negate, and you have a Albaz fusion on the field. Prevents a lot of stuff like, a lot of the hand traps, Ash, Ghost Bell, those kind of things that can really interrupt your plays, especially with the new Albion. Shredded, it just has a lot of good effects, either in hand or in the graveyard, sending branded spells and traps to the graveyard and draw 1. It's in your hand. If it's in the graveyard, then you're essentially dumping, but it's good to do that. Retribution, so you can recycle your branded fusion or any other branded spell or trap. I'm not running that many Bestials. When they came out in Darkling Blast, I found them to be pretty cheap, I guess is the word. Decks, that is on light or dark monsters, so like your Sword Souls, pretty much useless in hand unless you're banishing one of your monsters. Is not really ideal for this deck, just because you want to have interaction with the graveyard. It creates a lot of interruptions, just gives you some pause to your opponent. So 1 copy of Dark Magician, alt art. I am very excited for the speed duel to come out so I can have this in secret rare. And I know this is not going to make me the most popular person, but I am running Gimmick Puppet Nightmare. I haven't touched it yet. I'm kind of going back and forth between Gimmick and Ito, the Supreme Magical for whatever it is. I haven't been seeing a lot of people running, Book of Moon or Book of Eclipse, especially against decks like Flow. This doesn't do anything against Flow. But for hand traps, 2 Ash Blossoms and 2 Ghost Bells. I like, obviously Ash is, one of the most popular hand traps right now. Obviously good against, Live Twin, any deck that kind of relies on interaction with the graveyard, special summoning from the graveyard, sending it back, so like your Runix. So it has a nice added benefit for protection with your, the new Albion card. So say you try to get, obviously the Gimmick lock off and someone does a Called By or has a Bestial, you have a Ghost Bell in hand, use the Ghost Bell and you're pretty much protected and you can continue to play. Spells, well, it's banned or it's limited. 3 copies of Branded Opening. The nice thing about Branded Opening, obviously you can get your louvers on the field, but you can also get Quem, because Quems obviously it's also considered a Dogmatico or a DESPIA card, so it is searchable with Branded Opening. To me, it's a nice little added benefit, because if you want to go full combo, you want to get the gimmick puppet, you need Quem on the field and the Uber. So it doesn't come off that often, but when it does, it's super effective. Moving on, we have one copy of Branded Lost. Everyone says every card is the MVP of the deck, but like, I mean, this is a pretty key card for Branded, just because you're obviously fusion summoning a lot. As soon as it resolves, you can add a Cartesia, you can add a Fallen of Albaz. I usually go to the Mercurier for the extra negate. It protects a lot, or it protects all of your fusion summons, except for, you know, Branded Fusion and Ash, but you know, that's another story. Running one copy of Branded in red. I actually use this one all that often, but it is huge for, you know, guarding Chimera out there, you know, for back row and whatnot. Running 3 fusion deployments. Like I said, easy access to Cartesia, or say you want to drop a Fallen of Albaz on your opponent just to get a little interrupt. You know, it's pretty great right now. I don't see me cutting any of these, just because, you know, like I said, it's a good interruption. Even if you've already used Branded Fusion, you can still drop an Albaz, use its effect, you know, fuse an opponent's monster. 3 crossouts, because I'm running the Ash Ghost Bell, and when I get there Imperm, I have one of these in hand. It's easy to just, you know, banish one of those 3 and just keep continuing, because obviously Ash is the biggest offender for Branded. Don't see a lot of Ghost Bells, but you know, obviously between Ash and Imperm, if I can cross out and keep going, there's not a lot of follow-up to that. 2 talents. I like the draw ability. I don't always use the effect to look at your opponent's hand and send something back to the deck, but that's you know, a pretty good effect as well. In Control, I don't usually use that one, but it's the good ability to draw 2. If God forbid you do get ashed, or you know, another hand trap, an easy +2. A card that is probably the top candidate of the deck for me to cut in 13 matches at the last Nexus tournament, even at locals. I haven't drawn it. It's not searchable, and it's a very, very specific scenario where I would use this. Essentially, if I have a Grand Wignall on the field, this Summon Dragoon, just to have that Omni negate. But like I said, it's not searchable. Very specific scenario. Honestly, I haven't played it. I've discarded it, but I've never actually activated it. Last spells in the deck: Called By, you know, pretty standard, and Foolish Burial. Easy pitch Tragedy. Get access to Uber, Quem, etc. In terms of traps, 1 Branded Retribution. Pretty standard, I think, or should be if it's not. For any branded deck, you want to recycle your Branded Fusions, not necessarily Branded Opening. Actually, yeah, not necessarily Branded Opening, but definitely Branded in red or Branded Fusions. You know, just easy access to fusions, because obviously Branded Fusion, main engine of the deck. And then last but not least, it's been trimmed down a lot. I mean, right now it's at 43. If I end up cutting Duality, it's going to drop to 41. I might add Branded Banishment back, just because I personally love that card. Great for, you know, fusing anything that your opponent has and just getting it off the board. And I faced Tearlaments, and it would have been fantastic for that, to get rid of their Kaleido Heart. But that's besides the point. Moving on to the extra deck. Running 2 copies of Albion, 2 Mirror Jades. Pretty standard here. Got 1 copy of the new Albion. I can't say enough good things about this. 9 times out of 10, my first Branded Fusion that I use, it's to summon this, to get this on the board. Interruptions during the opponent's turn. Usually pitch it if I have enough branded cards in hand or whatnot. I'll pitch it with a Mirror Jade effect, and this has a nice added ability to special summon a Fallen of Albaz in your graveyard. Your opponent special summons something, you banish this from the graveyard, you can summon your Sprind. Because the nice thing about Sprind is you summon, it's Fallen of Albaz and literally anything your opponent special summoned that turn. It has a nice little benefit of back row clearance, like face up back row clearance. So like you're facing a lot of the floodgates, you know, you're not skill drain, but and match, you know, those kind of ones. Pops them. It actually pops the whole column, which I found out once, including your own cards, which, you know, didn't cost me the match, but it's very good to know. If I had anyone who wanted to use Sprint, 1 copy of Lubellion, 1 copy of Grand Wignall. I just love it. 600 life points for everything your opponent tries to do. Aquarius, great against matchups like Sword Soul or anything that really doesn't rely on fusions. You can pretty much, you know, blank out their entire board and just attack for game. Guardian Chimera, Dragostapelia. Most of these are pretty standard. You know, your Dragostapelias, an extra negate on the field. Dragoon, Uluwellith, hope I pronounced that right. She doesn't come up that often unless you're using the effect of Quertus to special summon a Despia monster from the extra deck. Actually, no, sorry, that's Grand Wignall, not Quertus. But she doesn't really come up that much. The only time she does is if I'm pitching her and, you know, special summoning a Cartesia or a Quem during the end phase. That effect really doesn't come up that much. I might just swap her with a Titaniclad, which essentially does the same thing, but I wouldn't be able to special summon a Cartesia during the end phase. Not a lot of honest application for this, besides pitching it, special summoning it with Grand Wignall, but it's 9 times out of 10, if I'm special summoning a Despia monster from the extra deck with Grand Wignall's effect, it's going to be Quertus. Just because if this gets removed from the board for literally any reason other than battle, you can drop another Alvaz. I mean, there's a common theme here of, you know, drop an Alvaz during your opponent's turn just for an interruption, which is super effective now that, you know, we have all these new cards that we can play with. Looking at my extra deck, I have 2 Magnemutes and 1 Drew Swarm. I don't main these, like I said, because they're pretty clunky. Whenever it's, you know, a mirror match or you're playing like a tier, actually, you're seeing a lot of new tier limits now. So, I mean, they're good to have for that matchup too. I like having 3 Kaijus. When I was running Nib instead of the Kaiju, your opponent would do the 5 summons, and you'd go to summon Nib. There'd always be a monster gate on the board already, where Nib would just, you couldn't do it. Whereas a Kaiju, more often than not, you just have to get over a Baron or something that has like an Omnium gate. You just tribute it away, and you're on to you know, full combo. Not to mention you can tribute away a pet, which I know is we just talked about. And if I can, the faster I can get a pet off the board, the better. So here's where I'm running a little bit of spice. We have Invader of Darkness, Jinzo, 2 cards as alternates to Gimmick Puppet. So when we look at the effect of Grand Wignall, 1 level 6 or higher light or dark monster, these qualify with that. So if you're not pitching a Gimmick Puppet, you can pitch a Jinzo, or you can pitch a Invader of Darkness. And then if you're playing like a Sky Striker, if you're playing a Runic, you put an Invader of Darkness on the board, their entire deck is nullified, because they can't activate quick spell cards. Jinzo, I mean, obviously Labyrinth, but yeah, these 2 cards, great against decks that rely on a lot of spells or traps. Not to mention old school Jinzo, who doesn't love that? The more we can add some nostalgia, you know, to the decks, we'll add a bonus. More back row clearance cards, Cosmic Cyclone and Lightning Storm, and then a card that saved my ass on more than 1 occasion, evenly matched, to me is still pretty relevant. So that's my side. So that completes pretty much everything that I got.